Hello, we're moving on with Stories from the Lakota Way by Joseph Marshall. This is illustrating the virtue of fortitude, strength of heart and mind. This is the story of the old woman's dog. Long ago, in the days before we Lakota wandered onto the open grass country west of the great muddy river, there was a great summer gathering along a river of many low falls. It was a time of renewal. The sun dance had been performed. It was also a time to see old friends and relatives, to learn who had gone to the next world since the last great gathering. Many people were gathered. There was great feasting. Victories were recounted, warriors were honored, and dancing went far into the nights. The camps stretched far along the banks of the river of low falls. An arrow from the strongest bow would have to fly 10 times to match the length of this great encampment. Forgets Nothing, a beautiful young woman from a small village of the White Swan Band, sat at her lodge door preparing porcupine quills to be dyed. She pressed them one at a time against the flat stone with her thumbnail. Not every woman had her patience for this work. Forgets Nothing could not help but watch the bustle and activity as she worked. Children darted about among the crowds like fork-tailed swallows. Groups of old men sat in the shade of cottonwoods to talk and to trade. Old women had their own groups. Somewhere a drum was pounding softly. She secretly envied the couples who walked by together, for she was not yet married. Not many young men came courting because she had a crooked foot and walked with a limp. An old woman carrying a large bundle and leading a large, handsome dog on a rope broke from the crowds and approached, stopping at Forget-Nothing's fire. All women want to wear braided porcupine quills in their hair, on their clothes, the old woman said. Not many want to do the work to turn them into many colors and braid them. You are young to be doing such fine work. I learned this from my mother and grandmother, Forgets-Nothing replied. Sit and rest, grandmother, if you like. The old woman smiled and put down her bundle. She seemed frail, but in her dark eyes there was a light, much like the flickering of a firefly. Her gray hair hung in 2 braids, and her face was etched with the furrows of a long life. Come here. You're being a butt. Stop being a butt. Come here. Thank you, granddaughter. I have passed many fires, but you are the first to offer rest to an old woman. And yet she had not let go of the rope tied to the dog's neck. Forgets-Nothing stood and passed a willow backrest to her guest. The dog lay down as the old woman sat. This is a fine chair, said the old woman. Feels good to rest. I have tea, offered Forgets-Nothing, and some stew. She noticed the dog was wearing a small, square medicine bundle around his neck. It was decorated with blue quills around the edges. That is a fine bundle, she observed. Thank you, I made it. Thank you also for your kindness. My name is Good Voice, said the old woman. I arrived only today. I have medicine herbs for some relatives who are not here, so I must go on, though I will return. I have not seen a gathering like this for many summers. Forgets-Nothing served her guest the tea and stew. She was a likable old woman. She ate quietly, savoring the stew, as was the habit of the old ones. Finished, she returned the large buffalo horn cup. She sipped the tea out of a smaller cup. Her clothes were dusty, her moccasins worn. She had traveled far. How far must you go, grandmother? Asked Forgets-Nothing. Not far, the old woman replied, but I must show them how to prepare the medicine, so I'll be away from here for a few days. If you have no place to rest tonight, my mother and I have room in our lodge. Stay with us. Thank you. It would be good to sleep on a bed. I have traveled so far. But I must go on now. I wonder if you would help me in another way. I would be glad to, grandmother, said Forgets-Nothing. Good, the old woman said. This is my dog. She stroked the animal's head gently. His grandmother was a wolf, they tell me. That's why he is so big and strong. He is a very good hunter, the best I have seen, and he is my friend. He listens to me without complaining or talking back disrespectfully. But I took a thorn from his foot only this morning, and I want him to rest. Can you keep him here for me until I return? He is quiet and is no trouble." "I will keep him for you," promised Forgets-Nothing. The dog wagged his tail as if he understood. "Does he have a name?" Sorry, wrong voice. "Does he have a name?" "Good." The old woman was happy and labored to her feet. "He has no name. Perhaps you will think of something. I will give you something for keeping him. Remember, he is all I have in this world." So saying, the old woman handed the dog's rope to Forgets-Nothing, grabbed her large bundle, and walked away, quickly losing herself in the crowd. Forgets-Nothing tied the dog's rope to a smoke-flap pole and tossed him a scrap of meat. The dog took it with a wag of his tail, swallowed it, and looked up at Forgets-Nothing, his brown eyes bright and inquisitive. "A name for you is not difficult," she told him. "I shall call you Wolf Eyes, because your grandmother's a wolf. I think you have her eyes." Forgets-Nothing Mother, Corn Woman, returned from a visit. "We have a dog now?" she asked. "Only for a few days," explained Forgets-Nothing. "He belongs to an old woman named Good Voice. He has hurt his foot, and she had to travel on, so she asked me to watch him until she returns. I have named him Wolf Eyes." The dog wagged his tail. "He is a fine-looking dog," Corn Woman observed. "You're being unplugged. Come here. Come here. Come here. Oh, okay." Excuse me a moment. There you go. That's a baby boy. That's a baby boy. Yeah. Oh my goodness. As the old woman, speaking of dogs. What, buddy? What? As the old woman promised, the dog was no trouble. He faithfully followed Forgets-Nothing through the encampment as she walked about. More people arrived each day. And the encampment grew larger. There are many dogs because they were carriers of burdens, pulling the drag poles piled high with belongings. Except for the very young, all the dogs were big and sturdy, but none as big as Wolf Eyes. He stayed next to Forgets-Nothing, without having to be tied, and took as much interest in watching the bustle of activity as she did. She talked to him as she would a good friend, if she'd had one, and he listened with great interest. At night he curled up just beside the door, and there he stayed until the door was opened the next morning. One afternoon a man with a limp approached Forgets-Me-Not's lodge and stopped. "My name is Long Walker," he announced. His voice was deep and his eyes flashed. He was dressed well and had the air of an important man. Forgets-Nothing had heard of him. He was a great warrior. "I have passed by and noticed your dog," he said. "He looks strong. He looks like he can pull a heavy load." "He is a fine dog," returned Forgets-Nothing, "and he is big and strong. I don't know if he has been taught to use the drag poles." "That is easily done," replied Long Walker. "I have need of such a dog. It has been a moon since I was wounded in a battle. I suffered 2 arrows in my leg, and the wounds have not yet healed. So I need a dog to carry my belongings. What will you take in trade?" "Oh, I cannot trade this dog to you," Forgets-Nothing replied. "He is not my dog. He belongs to an old woman named Good Voice. I am keeping him here until she returns." "Where has she gone?" he asked impatiently. "Perhaps she will trade with me." "I do not think so. She told me this dog is all she has in this world. I do not know where she has gone, and I do not know where she will return." Is that you, buddy? Is it you? "I have much I can offer in trade," the warrior insisted. "I am a fine hunter, and many tanned elk hides to trade, or perhaps you would like a bear hide robe to keep you warm in the coming winter." "Those are all good things to trade," the young woman admitted. "But he is not my dog. I cannot trade with you." Long Walker was losing his patience. I would wager the old woman who owns the dog would like to have those things, or she is not like any old woman I know. She would be happy to know that you traded such fine things for this one dog. 2 tanned elk hides and 2 bear hide robes, said the warrior. That is more than this dog is worth in my last offer. Forgets-Nothing did not like the man's tone. But he was a great warrior, and she was only a young woman without a husband. She did not want him to become angrier than he was. If he was my dog, I would give much thought to your fine offer, she said quietly. But he is not. I cannot trade him. Your stubbornness will get you nowhere in life, Long Walker spat. Forgets-Nothing would long remember the angry flash of his eyes as he turned and hurried away. That evening, she told her mother about the warrior who wanted a dog. He is well known among all of the bands here, said Corn Woman. He has 2 wives and more belongings than they can carry. He is a man who gets what he wants. He may return. That night, Forgets-Nothing let the dog sleep in the lodge, secretly worried that the warrior would take him. But she never saw the man again. A day later, she helped her mother carry some dried meat to the south end of the encampment. A family had given away all their belongings in honor of a beloved grandmother who had died. Now people were helping them with food and other necessities such as clothing and robes. Wolf Eyes followed Forgets-Nothing as if he had always belonged to her, and she found herself growing fond of him. He had an air of calmness and inner strength, and people looked at him and not her crooked foot. The family in mourning had a young child, a girl of 8 winters. Her name was In a Hurry because she had been born early. In a Hurry could not keep her eyes away from the dog. Wolf Eyes, of course, was friendly to the girl who had just lost her grandmother. The girl's mother, Leaf, was curious about the dog. He is the biggest dog I have ever seen, she said. But he seems so gentle. Did you raise him? No, replied Forgets-Nothing. He belongs to an old woman. She left him in my care while she visits her family. She will return soon. In a Hurry needs a friend, said Leaf. She was very close to her grandmother. Now she is so lost. She has not smiled since we lost my mother, until today when she saw your dog. Forgets-Nothing was dismayed because she knew what Leaf would ask. We will stay for a time, she offered, and I will come again tomorrow so that In a Hurry can play with him. My husband and I would be glad to give you what we can for the dog, said Leaf. Perhaps one of our dogs? My daughter does not take to them all. If he was my dog, I would be happy to give him to your daughter. I know how it is to lose a grandmother. I was 14 winters when mine died. But I told an old woman named Good Voice that I would care for him. Perhaps you can speak to her when she returns? Leaf was disappointed. But, unlike the great warrior, Long Walker, she was polite. Perhaps we will come to visit at your lodge tomorrow so my daughter can play with him. And so they did, and visited for the afternoon. Wolf Eyes patiently accepted the friendly attention of the young girl, and she smiled and waved when it was time for her to go home. Forgets-Nothing visited their lodge the following day, but she noticed a wistful look in the girl's eyes when Wolf Eyes had to leave. And so it was that on one day In a Hurry and Leaf would come to visit, and the next Forgets-Nothing would take the dog to their lodge. Before long, the dog helped the little girl remember how to smile. Forgets-Nothing began to worry that something had happened to the old woman, Good Voice, and because there was no way to know where she was, no inquiries could be made. There was nothing to do but continue waiting for her return. Meanwhile, she found herself growing more attached to the dog. Early the next morning, when she brought out the night coals from inside the fire pit, she found an old man sitting by the cold ashes of the outside fire pit. Forgets-Nothing recognized him. He was Flying By, a very powerful medicine man. His long hair was laced with gray beneath his buffalo horn cap. His face seemed carved from stone, but his voice was low and gentle. Granddaughter, he greeted, I am glad to see you on this fine morning. Grandfather, she replied, I am about to make a fire and will soon have hot tea. Perhaps you will have some? Thank you. Hot tea is always good. He laid a handful of twigs near the fire pit and waited as she blew on the coals and dropped dry grass on them. Soon little flames were dancing upward. "Thank you, baby." And she added the twigs. "I love you too." Forgets-Nothing went on with her work as Corn Woman emerged, leading the dog. She recognized the medicine man sitting at her outside fire and was pleased. A visit from such a powerful medicine man could only mean good things. "I am always glad for fine mornings such as this," said Quarter Woman, "and my daughter and I are honored to have you with us." "Thank you, sister," Flying By replied. "The older I become, the more mornings such as this seem precious." In a while the tea was ready, and Forgets-Nothing gave her guest a buffalo horn cup. The medicine man sipped quietly as the women prepared food. They knew he had not come to their lodge for no reason. They were eager to know, but waited patiently for him to speak of it. "I am here to ask something of you," he told them. "This is a fine gathering. Many people are here, and I have done many sacred ceremonies. There is one I must do some days from now, a ceremony that has not been done for 4 summers. I am talking of the Thunder Dreamer's ceremony." Forgets-Nothing glanced at the dog because she knew about the ceremony. A dog needed to be boiled for it. She said nothing. "The Thunder Dreamers are very powerful men and important warriors among us. They have asked me to help them with their ceremony. I am here because a dog is a necessary part of what I must do. But the dog that is chosen to be boiled in the pot cannot be any old camp dog. The dog must have certain qualities. I have been watching your dog. He is what I need. He is quiet and strong and seems to have a good spirit. As you know, a Thunder Dreamer reaches into the boiling water to pull out the head of the boiled dog, and then the other Thunder Dreamers eat the dog's flesh. The dog we kill and use must be a very good dog. If not, the ceremony will be weak and good for nothing, and nothing itself will be gained. So I have come to ask you for your dog. The Thunder Dreamers need his strength for this ceremony. The gift of such a dog to them would mean good fortune to anyone who gives it." Forgets-Nothing was afraid. Flying By was a powerful man. "Grandfather," she said, sighing, "this is a very good dog. He is very strong and of good spirit. But he is not my dog. I told an old woman I would keep it for her. She is visiting relatives and told me she would return for him. If he were my dog, I would be very honored to give him as a gift to the Thunder Dreamers, but I cannot." Flying By quietly pondered her words, and his disappointment was plain to see. "Yes," he said, "I can see how it is." He finished his tea and accepted a horn ladle full of buffalo meat, soup from Corn Woman. He said nothing as he ate. Forgets-Nothing and her mother exchanged nervous looks and waited. "This is the best soup I've tasted in a long time," the medicine man said as he gave back the horn ladle. He rose to his feet and smiled. "That is a very fine dog, and he is fortunate to have such a good friend. Thank you for your hospitality." The old man turned and walked away, without a backward glance. In a Hurry came that afternoon to visit, and she was playing with the dog. A small figure emerged from the crowds and stopped. It was Good Voice. Forgets-Nothing was never so happy to see anyone in her life. "Grandmother," she said, "it is very good to see you. I hope your journey was good." The old woman put down her bundle and sat. "All journeys are good," she replied. "We learn something from each one, good or bad. It is good to see you also, and to know that you have taken good care of my dog." She looked at the young girl next to the dog. "You are on a sad journey. I can see from the ashes on your cheeks that you are in mourning." "Yes," said Forgets-Nothing. "In a Hurry lost her grandmother." Sorrow and compassion washed over the old woman's face. "Grandmothers are the very best friends anyone can have. There is no way to replace them," she said, reaching into her bundle and pulling out the small ball of fur. It was a puppy. Sometimes we can try to find new friends. I found this one along the trail, but I'm afraid she needs someone young to run and play with. I cannot do that. Can you help me?" she asked in a hurry. "She needs a friend like you." The girl's smile was as bright as the new rising sun as she took the puppy in her arms. "How can we repay you?" Leaf asked. Good Voice smiled at the girl. "Never forget your grandmother," she advised. "Payment is not needed." The smile on the girl's face would not go away as she and her mother departed with the puppy. "Grandmother," said Forgets-Nothing, "that was a very kind thing for you to give a puppy to that little girl. It is fortunate that you found a puppy on your journey." "Life provides the gifts if we know where to look," replied the old woman. "I am glad you have returned and that your journey was good," said Forgets-Nothing. "Your dog, I call him Wolf Eyes, is so big and strong that some want to have him." "Oh, I know," replied the old woman. "I thank you for keeping him. Elk hides, buffalo robes, and good fortune are very fine things to have. Many would have traded the dog. A great warrior, a heartbroken girl, a powerful holy man all have strong need of a dog. But you have a strength of mind. You honored your promise to me. I am grateful." "How is it you know?" Forgets-Nothing was astonished. "It only matters that I know. I also know that few people have your strength of mind. Others would have traded the dog for the fine things that they were offered and then told me that the dog wandered away. Life will reward you for that." From her bundle she took a long wooden vial and gave it to Forgets-Nothing. "For your foot," she said. "Rub it on every day. It is a salve made from the ankle bones of the pronghorn antelope, as we know they are very fast runners on the flatlands. Their ankles are thin but very, very strong." Good Voice stayed the night in the lodge of Forgets-Nothing and Corn Woman. Forgets-Nothing woke at dawn and was not surprised to see the old woman's bed empty. The dog, too, was gone. She spent the day going about her chores with a feeling of emptiness. That evening she rubbed the salve on her ankle before she went to sleep. More empty days passed. She missed the dog and his inquisitive stare, but she also missed the old woman, especially when she noticed that the stiffness in her ankle seemed not as bad. One evening Forgets-Nothing went to watch the dancing, but stood at the outside edge of the dancing circle, envying all who could dance. She kept to the shadows, as she always did, because she did not want people to see that when she walked with a limp. Like a sudden cold rain, a feeling of loneliness fell upon her as she watched several couples do the long, winding snake dance, side by side, hand in hand. The drums pounded like a heartbeat, like the soft rhythm of life itself. Forgets-Nothing saw couples who had eyes only for each other as they danced, and felt herself outside the flow and the rhythm. "Grandmother," she said, talking to Good Voice in her mind, "perhaps I should have asked you if you had a husband for me in your bundle." In a moment she turned away from the dancing and walked slowly back to her own lodge. She was at her fire outside the lodge the next morning when a figure stopped by before her, blocking the low rays of the morning sun. "I have just arrived," said a low, deep voice. "I will gladly give you all this meat if you would cook but one meal for me." Forgets-Nothing shaded her eyes to look at the stranger. He was tall, with inquisitive eyes. His shoulders were wide, and on his drag poles was the carcass of a freshly killed deer. "If you cut up the meat, I will cook it for you," she replied. The man went to work. Forgets-Nothing could see he was not much older than she was, and his face was strong and pleasant. She built up her fire as Corn Woman emerged from the lodge. "Mother," she said, "we have fresh meat. This young man was kind enough to bring it." The young man stood to acknowledge Corn Woman, and Forgets-Nothing gasped as she noticed a small bundle tied around his neck. Its edges were quilled in blue. Soon the smell of roasting meat floated about as Forgets-Nothing carefully tended her cooking. The young man finished cutting up the meat and hung the pieces on racks next to the lodge. Now and then Forgets-Nothing glanced at the bundle around his neck. It was exactly like the one around the neck of the old woman's dog. "I will go to the river and wash," said the young man. "When you return, the meat will be ready," replied Forgets-Nothing. She noticed he walked with a slight limp. He had neatly laid aside the drag poles next to his weapons and his large bundle. "He does not yet have a wife," observed Poor Woman, to which Forgets-Nothing could only stay silent. But her heart was pounding. Before long he returned, and a skewer of meat was waiting for him. He sat and politely waited. "Have you an injury?" asked Forgets-Nothing. "You are limping a little." "It is nothing, only a thorn through the sole of my foot," he replied. "Someone removed it for me." "Have you come far?" "Yes," he said, "I have been traveling for many, many days. I have never been here to this part of the country, so I was lost." "Where are you going?" "Wherever life takes me," he answered, smiling. "You have many questions." "Yes," Forgets-Nothing, "and I have another. Who are your people, and what is your name?" He smiled again. "I believe I am from the White Wolf band. My parents were killed when I was very young, and so I was taken and raised by my aunts and several grandmothers. I have a name, but I do not remember how it was given to me. My name is Wolf Eyes. What is yours?" "Thank you."